The girl knew something was wrong the moment the carriage stopped. Not slowed, not turned, stopped. The sudden silence outside was worse than the rattling wheels had been. It felt heavy, like the air itself was watching. Inside the carriage, the girl sat perfectly still, her hands folded tightly in her lap to hide the trembling. Across from her sat a man who had not spoken a single word since they left the city, the Earl of Ashbourne. He had purchased her 2 hours earlier. Purchased. Even thinking the word made her stomach twist. She had been standing on a raised wooden platform in a crowded hall filled with strangers who stared at her as if she were livestock. Men had bid money, women had whispered behind fans, and then the Earl had lifted one hand calmly and said a number that silenced the entire room. No one else bid after that. Now she was here, in a carriage, alone with the most powerful man she had ever seen. The Earl finally looked up. His eyes were darker than she expected, not cruel exactly, but not gentle either. "Why did the carriage stop?" she asked quietly. Her voice sounded smaller than she wanted. The Earl did not answer right away. Instead, he looked out the window toward the darkness outside. Then he said something that made the girl's blood run cold. "They've been following us." Her fingers tightened in her skirt. "Who?" The Earl's expression did not change. "Men, who should not know where you are." The girl blinked. "Why would anyone follow me?" The Earl looked at her again. For a moment he studied her as if measuring something invisible. Then he said calmly, "That is the question, isn't it?" A loud knock struck the carriage door. Both of them froze. Another knock, harder. A man's voice called from outside. "Open the door." The Earl reached into his coat slowly. The girl saw the glint of metal in his hand. A pistol. Her breath caught. The Earl leaned forward slightly. His voice dropped to a whisper. "When that door opens, stay behind me." The girl's heart began pounding violently. "I don't understand what is happening." The Earl's eyes stayed on the carriage door. "You will." The handle began to turn, and in that moment the servant girl realized something terrifying. The most dangerous part of this night was not the men outside the carriage. It was the man who had bought her. Now, before we go any further into this story, I want to ask you something. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? Tell me your city and your country in the comments. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy dramatic historical stories filled with secrets, twists, and moments that leave you holding your breath, make sure you subscribe to Jane Tells Stories. Because the story you're about to hear shocked all of England. But to understand why a powerful earl would buy a servant girl at auction, we have to go back. Back to the moment everything began. 3 days earlier, London. The rain had just stopped when the auction began. Inside the tall stone building on Fleet Street, candles flickered against the walls while the room slowly filled with aristocrats, merchants, and curious spectators. It was not the kind of event people spoke about openly, but it was the kind of event people attended anyway. Because sometimes the things society pretends not to see are the things it secretly enjoys the most. The servant girl stood at the edge of the room beside several others, girls from poor houses, runaways, indentured workers whose contracts had been sold. Some looked frightened, some looked angry. One or two looked completely empty, as if their spirits had already left. The girl kept her chin lifted. Her name was Clara, Clara Hart, and she had promised herself she would not cry. Not here. Not in front of these people. The auctioneer cleared his throat and stepped onto the platform. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said with a practiced smile, Thank you for your patience this evening. A murmur passed through the crowd. The first few sales went quickly. A kitchen maid, a stable boy, two seamstresses. Money exchanged hands, contracts signed, and the room grew warmer as the crowd settled into the rhythm of buying and selling human lives. Clara's turn came sooner than she expected. Next, the auctioneer called. He gestured toward her. Clara forced her legs to move. She stepped onto the wooden platform. Hundreds of eyes turned toward her instantly. The auctioneer smiled. You see before you a healthy servant girl of 18 years, strong, capable, and educated enough to read and write. A few eyebrows lifted in the crowd. Literacy made her more valuable. The auctioneer continued smoothly. She previously served in a merchant household until unfortunate circumstances required the sale of her contract. That was a polite way of saying the merchant had died, and his debts had swallowed everything he owned, including the servants. The auctioneer clapped his hands. Let us begin. A man near the front raised 2 fingers. £5. Another voice answered immediately. 7. 10. Clara stared straight ahead. She refused to look at the faces, refused to let them see her fear. The numbers climbed slowly. 12, 14, 16. Then something strange happened. The room grew quiet, not gradually. Suddenly, Clara felt the shift in the air before she understood it. People were turning toward the back of the room. Someone important had arrived. The auctioneer paused mid-sentence. Even he looked surprised. Clara finally allowed her eyes to move. A tall man had stepped through the doorway, as he wore a dark coat, cut in the latest London fashion, but there was nothing flashy about him. Everything about him was quiet, controlled, dangerous. People moved aside without being asked. Clara heard someone whisper the name softly. The Earl of Ashbourne. The auctioneer straightened quickly. My lord, what an unexpected pleasure. The Earl did not respond. His gaze had already settled on Clara. The way he looked at her was different from the others. Not curious, not greedy, focused, like a man studying a puzzle. The auctioneer cleared his throat nervously. We were just beginning the bidding on this young woman. The Earl stepped forward once. How much? The room held its breath. The auctioneer stammered slightly. The current offer stands at £16, my lord. The Earl lifted one hand. 30. Gasps rippled through the crowd. £30 was more than most servants earned in several years. The auctioneer blinked rapidly. £30, he repeated loudly. Do I hear another offer? Silence. No one challenged a nobleman. The auctioneer swallowed. Sold. The hammer struck the wood. Just like that. Clara Hart belonged to the Earl of Ashbourne, and she had no idea that this moment would begin a chain of events that would shake the entire country. The carriage door burst open. Cold night air rushed inside. A lantern's light flooded the small space, blinding Clara for a moment. 3 men stood outside. Their coats were soaked from the rain, their hats pulled low, their faces half hidden in shadow. None of them looked like highway robbers. They looked too organized, too calm. The Earl did not lower the pistol. Gentlemen, he said evenly, you've taken a great deal of trouble to catch up with us. One of the men stepped closer to the door. His voice was smooth, almost polite. My lord, we believe you are carrying something that does not belong to you. The Earl did not blink. I purchased everything in this carriage legally. The man's eyes shifted toward Clara. That remains to be seen. Clara's stomach twisted. The Earl spoke again. If you're planning to take her, I suggest you reconsider. The man gave a faint smile. We are not here to take a servant girl. Clara blinked. Then why? The man continued calmly. We are here because of what she carries. Clara's heart stumbled. I don't carry anything, she said quickly. The man ignored her. His attention stayed fixed on the Earl. You should not involve yourself in matters you don't understand, my lord. The Earl finally smiled slightly. It was not a pleasant smile. You would be surprised how much I understand. The lantern light flickered as the wind picked up outside. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the man said quietly, Hand the girl over. The Earl raised the pistol a little higher. No. The man sighed softly. Then this becomes inconvenient. His hand moved toward his coat. Clara's heart began to pound violently, but before anyone could draw a weapon, something unexpected happened. From somewhere in the darkness behind the men came the sound of galloping horses. Fast, very fast. The three men turned. Out of the night rode 4 armed riders, estate guards, the Earl's guards. The lead rider shouted, My lord! The 3 men by the carriage cursed under their breath. The Earl lowered the pistol slightly. Bad timing, gentlemen. The intruders exchanged a quick glance. Then the leader stepped back. This is not finished. The 3 of them disappeared into the darkness just as the guards rode up. The captain of the guard jumped from his horse. My lord, are you unharmed? The Earl nodded. Yes. The captain glanced toward Clara. And the girl? The Earl's answer came without hesitation. She is under my protection. Clara stared at him. Protection. That was not the word she expected. The captain frowned slightly. Should we pursue them? The Earl considered the dark road for a moment. No. The guard looked surprised. My lord? They wanted us to chase them, the Earl said calmly. The captain nodded slowly. Very well. He gestured to the other riders. Escort the carriage. Within minutes they were moving again. The carriage wheels rolled forward through the dark countryside. Clara sat quietly across from the Earl again. But now her mind raced. Finally she spoke. They weren't after you. No. They were after me. Yes. She swallowed. But they said I was carrying something. The Earl leaned back slightly. They believe you are. But I'm not. I know. She frowned. Then why would they think that? The Earl watched her carefully. Because someone told them. The carriage rocked gently as it travelled down the road. Clara stared at him. You mean someone lied? Yes. Why? The Earl's voice remained calm. To find you. Clara's stomach tightened. But why me? The Earl did not answer immediately. Instead, he studied her face again, as if searching for something. Finally, he said, That is what we are going to discover. Hours later, the carriage reached the Ashbourne estate. Clara had never seen a house so large. The mansion rose from the hills like something from a storybook. Tall stone walls, long windows glowing with warm light, gardens stretching across the dark countryside. Servants hurried forward as the carriage stopped. The Earl stepped out first. Then he turned and offered Clara his hand. She hesitated. Servants were not offered hands, but he waited. Reluctantly, she took it. His grip was steady, warm and surprisingly gentle. The house steward approached quickly. My lord, everything has been prepared. Good. The steward glanced at Clara curiously. The Earl spoke firmly. This is Miss Hart. The steward nodded politely. Miss Hart. Clara blinked. Miss. No one had called her that since her father died. The Earl continued. She will be staying in the West Wing. The steward's eyebrows lifted slightly. The West Wing was where guests stayed, not servants. But he did not question it. Of course, my lord. Clara looked at the Earl. You're not putting me in the servant quarters? No. Why? The Earl met her gaze. Because you are not a servant here. Clara stared at him in confusion. You bought me at an auction. Yes. That makes me a servant. No, he said calmly. Then what am I? The Earl answered with quiet certainty. You are the only person in England who can unlock something very dangerous. Clara felt the ground shift under her feet. I don't understand. You will. He turned to the steward. No one enters the West Wing without my permission. Yes, my lord. The Earl looked back at Clara. You must not leave the house alone. Why? Because the men tonight will return. Her throat tightened. And next time, they may not fail. Clara took a slow breath, then asked the question that had been growing inside her mind since the auction. Why did you really buy me? The Earl looked at her quietly. Then he said something that made her heart stop. Because your father hid something before he died. Clara froze. My father died 10 years ago. Yes. And you think he hid something? I know he did. Her voice dropped. What? The Earl's answer came slowly. A key. Clara frowned. A key to what? The Earl's eyes darkened slightly. To something powerful enough that men are willing to kill for it. Clara felt a chill crawl down her spine. I've never seen any key. The Earl nodded. I expected you to say that. Then why buy me? Because, he said quietly, the key is not something you hold. Clara's breath caught. Then what is it? The Earl stepped a little closer and spoke the words that would change her life forever. The key is something only you can remember. Clara stared at him. I don't remember anything. The Earl's voice was calm. You will. Clara did not sleep that night, even after the servants brought her to the West Wing and showed her a bedroom larger than any place she had ever lived. Sleep would not come. The room was warm. A fire burned quietly in the hearth. Thick curtains blocked the cold night air. The bed alone looked softer than anything she had touched in years, but Clara sat at the edge of it, fully dressed, staring at the flames. Your father hid something before he died. The Earl's words kept echoing in her mind. Her father. She had not spoken about him in years, not because she had forgotten, but because remembering hurt too much. He had been a quiet man, a bookbinder in a small town outside London. He worked long hours repairing old books for wealthy clients who rarely looked at his face. But when he came home in the evening, he always smiled, always asked her what she had learned that day, always told her stories about the strange things hidden inside old books. Clara closed her eyes. One memory rose slowly from the past, a cold evening. Her father sitting by the small lantern in their tiny home, a heavy book open on the table, and a man standing in the doorway, a tall man, wearing a dark coat. Clara's eyes opened suddenly. Her heart skipped. The Earl. No, not the Earl, but someone like him, a nobleman. She pressed her fingers to her temples, trying to pull the memory clearer. The man had argued with her father. She remembered that now. Their voices had been low but tense. Her father kept saying the same words. It is too dangerous. The other man had answered calmly. Danger is the price of truth. Clara stood slowly. Her breath had become shallow. Why had she never remembered this before? She walked to the window and pushed the curtain aside. The Ashbourne estate stretched across the dark hills beyond the glass, and somewhere inside this enormous house, the Earl was awake too. She knew it. Without fully understanding why, Clara left her room. The West Wing hallway was quiet. The servants had retired hours ago. Only the faint glow of lanterns lit the corridor. She walked slowly, unsure where she was going, until she saw the light, a narrow beam shining from beneath a door at the end of the hall. She hesitated, then knocked softly. The door opened almost immediately. The Earl stood there, still dressed, his coat removed, but his posture as straight and controlled as before. His eyes flicked toward her. "You remembered something." It was not a question. Clara nodded slowly. "How did you know?" "Because people only come knocking on my door after midnight, when their memories begin to return." She stepped inside. The room was a study, walls covered with maps, shelves filled with documents, and a large desk at the center. The Earl closed the door quietly. "What did you remember?" Clara took a breath. "When I was a child, a nobleman visited my father." The Earl's expression sharpened. "Describe him." "Tall, dark coat. He spoke like someone used to being obeyed." "That describes half the House of Lords." She gave a faint, nervous smile. "He argued with my father." "About what?" "I don't know." She hesitated, "but I remember something strange." The Earl waited. "My father gave the man a book." The Earl's eyes narrowed. "What kind of book?" "I don't know. It was thick, leather cover, old." Clara's voice softened. "And my father told him something." "What?" Her eyes lifted to meet the Earl's. "He said, 'The truth will open it.'" The Earl went completely still. Clara noticed the change immediately. "You know what that means." The Earl walked slowly to the desk. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a folded piece of parchment. He placed it on the table between them. Clara stepped closer. "What is that?" "A list." "Of what?" The Earl met her gaze. "Of men who have been searching for you." Her stomach tightened. "Why?" "Because the book your father gave away." His voice lowered. "It contains proof." Clara felt the room grow colder. "Proof of what?" The Earl spoke the answer quietly. "Treason." Her heart slammed. "Treason?" "Yes." "Against England?" The Earl nodded once. "And the men who committed it have spent 10 years trying to find the book your father hid." Clara shook her head slowly. "But he gave it to the nobleman." "Yes." "Then why would they need me?" The Earl studied her face again. "Because they believe the nobleman never received it." Clara frowned. "What do you mean?" The Earl tapped the parchment with one finger. "The man who visited your father disappeared the following night." Clara's breath caught. Disappeared?" "No body. No explanation. Nothing." A chill ran through her. "Then where did the book go?" The Earl's voice was quiet. "That is what everyone wants to know." Clara's mind raced. "My father said the truth would open it." "Yes. Maybe. The book isn't just a book." The Earl's eyes glinted faintly. "That is exactly what I suspect." Clara looked down at the parchment. The names written there made her uneasy. "Are these the men who attacked the carriage?" "Some of them." Her voice trembled. "And the others?" "The others are far more dangerous." A sudden knock sounded at the study door. Both of them froze. The Earl moved instantly. His hand slipped into the drawer again. The pistol reappeared. "Who is it?" he called. A servant's voice answered nervously. "My lord, Forgive the interruption. The Earl opened the door slightly. The servant looked pale. There is a rider at the gate. At this hour. Yes, my lord. What does he want? The servant swallowed. He brought a message. The Earl frowned. For whom? The servant looked toward Clara. For the girl. Clara's heart skipped. For me? Yes. The Earl took the folded letter from the servant. The door closed again. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the Earl handed it to her. Open it. Clara unfolded the paper slowly. The message inside was short. Very short. But her hands began to tremble. What does it say? The Earl asked. Clara lifted her eyes slowly. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. It says... She swallowed hard. We have the book. The Earl's expression hardened instantly. Clara finished the message. And if you want to see it again... Her throat tightened. You must come alone. The Earl's voice dropped dangerously. Where? Clara looked down at the last line. Her heart began pounding faster than ever. It says, midnight tomorrow. At the old cathedral ruins. She lifted her eyes to him again. And if we don't come... Her voice broke slightly. They will burn the book. The room fell silent. The Earl stared at the letter. Then he said something that made Clara's blood run cold. They're lying. Clara blinked. What? The Earl's gaze darkened. They don't have the book. Then why send this? He answered slowly. Because they know something we don't. Clara's stomach twisted. What? The Earl looked straight at her. They know you. Clara felt the weight of those words settle heavily inside her chest. And suddenly she understood something terrifying. This was never about the book alone. It was about her. The words on the letter did not change, no matter how many times Clara read them. Midnight, tomorrow. The old cathedral ruins. Come alone. Her hands slowly lowered the paper. The Earl had not moved. He stood beside the desk, one hand resting against the wood, his expression darker than she had seen before. You said they were lying, Clara said quietly. Yes. They don't have the book. No. Then why send this message? The Earl's eyes lifted to meet hers. Because they need you. Clara's stomach tightened. I don't have the book either. I know. Then what do they want from me? The Earl was silent for a long moment. Finally, he said something that made the air feel heavier. They want your memory. Clara blinked. My memory? Yes. I already told you I don't remember anything about a book. You remember more than you think. Clara shook her head slowly. You're wrong. The Earl did not argue. Instead, he walked to one of the tall shelves in the study and pulled down a thin leather folder. He returned to the desk and opened it. Inside were several papers. One of them he slid across the table toward her. Clara leaned closer. It was an old sketch, a drawing of a book. The cover had strange carvings on it, symbols she did not recognize. Her fingers hovered above the page. My father owned this? The Earl nodded. Yes. What is it? The most dangerous book ever written. Clara looked up sharply. That sounds like a story. It is a story, the Earl said quietly. A story powerful men have been trying to bury for 10 years. Clara studied the drawing again. Why is it dangerous? Because it contains proof. Proof of the treason you mentioned? Yes. Clara frowned. But if the book exists, why haven't they destroyed it? The Earl leaned back slightly. Because they can't open it. Her eyes narrowed. What do you mean? It's locked. A book can be locked? This one can. Clara stared at the strange carved symbols on the drawing. And only the truth opens it? Yes. She looked up again. My father said that. Yes. Then he must have known how. The Earl's gaze remained steady. He did. Clara's heart skipped. And he told you? No. Then how do you know all of this? The Earl answered quietly. Because I was the nobleman who visited your father. Clara froze. The room suddenly felt very small. You… Yes. You were there? Yes. You spoke to him? Yes. Clara's mind spun. The half-remembered memory suddenly shifted into clearer focus. The tall man. The argument. Her father saying it was too dangerous. You were younger, she said slowly. Much younger. Yes. And my father trusted you. The Earl did not answer immediately. Then he said softly, he believed I would protect the truth. Clara's throat tightened. But the book disappeared? Yes. And you've been searching for it ever since? Yes. Why? The Earl looked at her calmly. Because your father died protecting it. Clara felt her chest tighten painfully. My father died of illness. No. The word fell into the room like a stone. Clara stared at him. No? The Earl's voice remained quiet. He was murdered. Her breath caught. That's not possible. It is. Who did it? The same men who chased us tonight. Clara's hands began to tremble. Then why didn't they take the book? Because they never found it. Silence filled the study. Clara stared down at the drawing again. My father hid it. Yes. But if he hid it? She looked up slowly. Why do they think I know where it is? The Earl spoke carefully. Because the night before he died, your father told someone the truth. Clara's stomach twisted. What truth? That only one person in the world could unlock the book. Her voice dropped. Who? The Earl held her gaze. You. Clara felt the floor shift beneath her. That's impossible. No. I was a child. Yes. I didn't even know about the book. You didn't need to. Clara shook her head desperately. I don't understand. The Earl stepped closer. Your father did not hide the key inside an object. Then where? He hid it inside a memory. Clara's breath became shallow. A memory? Yes. A memory of what? The Earl's voice lowered. The day he showed you the book. Clara closed her eyes. Her mind began searching desperately through years of half-forgotten childhood moments. And slowly, something began to surface. A warm afternoon. Her father sitting beside her at the table. The strange book in front of them. And he had opened the cover slightly. Inside the first page, there had been a symbol. No, not just a symbol. A pattern. He had asked her to read something. A sentence. Clara's eyes snapped open. I remember. The Earl leaned forward. What do you remember? Clara's voice trembled. He made me read the first line. What line? She swallowed hard. I don't remember the words. But you remember the pattern. Her hands began shaking again. Yes. The Earl exhaled slowly. That's enough. Clara frowned. Enough for what? To open the book. Silence filled the room. Then Clara looked at the letter again. The message said to come alone. Yes. But you won't let me. No. Then what do we do? The Earl's voice turned colder. We go anyway. Clara blinked. You said they were lying. They are. Then why go? The Earl's expression hardened. Because tomorrow night. He paused. They will bring the book. Clara stared at him. You're certain? Yes. How? The Earl answered quietly. Because they cannot open it either. The truth settled heavily between them. For 10 years, powerful men had been searching for the same thing, the book, and the one person who could unlock it. Clara. The Earl reached for the pistol on the desk again. His voice was calm, but firm. Tomorrow night changes everything. Clara's heart pounded. What happens tomorrow night? The Earl met her eyes. Tomorrow night. England learns the truth. And far away in the dark countryside, inside a ruined cathedral, another group of men were already preparing for the meeting. Men who had waited 10 years for this moment, and who believed that by tomorrow, the servant girl would belong to them. The next day moved slowly, too slowly. Clara spent most of it in the west wing, staring out the tall windows toward the distant hills while the wind rolled through the fields. The Ashbourne estate looked peaceful in daylight, almost gentle, but nothing about the situation felt gentle anymore. Somewhere beyond those hills were men who had waited 10 years to capture something her father died protecting. And somehow, without ever knowing it, she had become the key to it all. By late afternoon, the house had grown quieter. Servants moved softly through the corridors, whispering about the strange tension that had settled over the estate. The Earl had said very little since morning. He had spent hours inside his study with maps spread across the table, speaking quietly with the captain of the guards. Now, as evening fell, Clara finally found him in the courtyard. He was saddling his horse himself. She stopped beside the stone archway. You're really going? The Earl tightened the saddle strap calmly. Yes. And you expect me to come with you? Yes. Clara crossed her arms. They said I should come alone. They also tried to kill us last night. That's true. He finally looked up at her. So we will not trust their instructions. Clara hesitated. What if it's a trap? It is a trap. You say that very calmly? The Earl gave the smallest hint of a smile. Calm helps. Clara stepped closer. How many guards are coming? None. Her eyes widened. None? They will follow at a distance. That still sounds like guards. Yes. Clara let out a slow breath. And what if they actually have the book? The Earl's expression darkened slightly. Then tonight we take it back. And if they don't? Then we make them tell us where it is. The sky above the estate had begun to turn deep blue as night approached. Clara glanced toward the gates. When do we leave? Soon. She studied him for a moment. You're not afraid? No. That's unusual. The Earl mounted the horse smoothly. Fear is useful, he said, but panic is not. He extended a hand toward her. Come. Clara hesitated only a second before taking it. He pulled her easily up behind him. The horse shifted slightly beneath their weight. Hold on, he said. The estate gates opened. The ride through the countryside was silent. Moonlight washed across the rolling fields, turning the world pale and quiet. Clara could hear only the steady rhythm of the horse's hooves and the wind brushing through the tall grass. After nearly an hour, the ruins appeared. The old cathedral had been abandoned long before Clara was born. Only broken stone walls and a collapsed tower remained, rising from the hillside like the skeleton of something ancient. The Earl slowed the horse. They're already here. Clara saw them. Lanterns flickered among the crumbling arches. Several figures stood waiting in the open courtyard of the ruins. The Earl dismounted first and helped Clara down. Stay close to me, he murmured. They walked forward together. Boots echoed softly on the stone floor. One of the men stepped forward. Clara recognized him immediately. The same man who had spoken beside the carriage the night before. His polite smile returned. "My lord, Miss Hart." "You're early," the Earl said calmly. "We are careful men." The man gestured toward the center of the ruins. "Shall we?" The Earl did not move. "You said you had the book." The man nodded toward another figure standing in the shadows. The second man stepped forward slowly. In his hands he carried something wrapped in dark cloth. Clara's heart began pounding faster. The cloth was pulled away. The book looked exactly like the drawing. Thick leather. Strange carved symbols on the cover. Clara felt the breath leave her lungs. "That's it." The Earl's eyes narrowed. "Yes." The man holding the book smiled slightly. "You see? We are not unreasonable." Clara stepped closer without realizing it. "My father's book." "Yes." The leader of the group clasped his hands behind his back. "And now we will make a simple exchange." The Earl's voice remained calm. "What exchange?" "You give us the girl." Clara's stomach tightened. "And we give you the book." The Earl did not hesitate. "No." The man sighed. "I expected that answer." He gestured toward Clara. "But perhaps she will be more cooperative." Clara lifted her chin. "I'm listening." The man's eyes glinted faintly. "Your father died protecting this book." "Yes." "And the Earl here has spent 10 years trying to recover it." Clara glanced briefly at the Earl. "That's true." The man continued. "But neither of you can open it?" Clara frowned. "Or why not?" "Because the lock is not mechanical." She looked at the book again. "You said only the truth opens it." "Yes." "And you believe I remember the truth." The man smiled. "We know you do." Clara's voice sharpened. "Then why bring the book here?" The man answered calmly. "To watch you open it." The Earl spoke suddenly. "That was never the plan." The man's eyes shifted toward him. "Plans change." Clara's heart raced. "What happens after I open it?" The man's smile widened slightly. "Then we will see what secrets your father protected." "And if I refuse?" The man shrugged. "Then the Earl dies." Clara felt the tension beside her shift instantly. Several men lifted pistols from their coats. The Earl's voice dropped. "You planned this carefully?" "Of course." Clara looked at the book again. The symbols on the cover seemed strangely familiar now. A faint memory stirred inside her mind. Her father's voice. The warm light of their small home. Read the first line. She stepped forward slowly. The Earl's hand caught her wrist. "No." She looked at him. "If I don't do this, they'll kill you." "They might kill me anyway." "Maybe." "But if I open the book—" Her voice softened. "We finally learn the truth." The Earl's jaw tightened. "Clara." She gently pulled her hand free. "I remember the line." The leader of the men smiled. "I thought you might." Clara took the book carefully. The leather felt cold beneath her fingers. Her heart pounded louder with every second. "Open it," the man said. Clara slowly lifted the cover. Inside the first page, beneath the strange symbols, was a single line of text. Her father's voice echoed clearly in her memory. She whispered the words. "The truth belongs to no king." The symbols on the page shifted. A faint click echoed from inside the book. Every man in the ruins froze. Clara turned the page, and what she saw there made her blood run cold, because the first name written inside the book was not Lord Montague. It was the Earl of Ashbourne. Clara slowly looked up at him. Her voice trembled. "You're in the book." And for the first time since she had met him, the Earl of Ashbourne looked surprised. For several seconds after Clara spoke, the wind moving through the broken cathedral arches was the only sound. The men holding the pistols did not move. The lanterns flickered softly against the old stone, and the Earl of Ashbourne stood perfectly still. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she held the open book. She read the name again, just to be certain her eyes had not betrayed her. Alexander Ashbourne, the Earl's full name, written clearly on the first page. Below it were dates, meetings, transactions, witnesses. Clara's chest tightened. She slowly lifted her eyes. "You're in the book." The men surrounding them had already begun to murmur among themselves. The leader stepped forward quickly. "Well," he said with a pleased smile. "That is very interesting." His eyes turned toward the Earl. "Care to explain, my lord?" The Earl said nothing. Clara felt her pulse pounding harder. "You knew about this?" His gaze moved to her. Yes." The single word landed heavily. Clara felt the ground shift beneath her. "You knew your name was in the book?" "Yes." The leader of the group laughed softly. 10 years of searching for the truth, and it turns out the Earl himself was part of the conspiracy. Clara's voice shook. "Is that true?" The Earl's expression remained steady. "Yes." The words hit her like a physical blow. "You were part of the treason." "No." Clara frowned. "But your name—" "My name is there," he said quietly, "because I helped your father write it." The leader of the group's smile faded slightly. "What?" The Earl stepped forward slowly. "I was not one of the traitors." He gestured toward the pages. "I was the witness." Clara looked back down at the book. Now that she read more carefully, the pattern became clearer. Names of powerful men. Beside each name, evidence, meetings, bribes, plans. But beside the Earl's name, there was something different. A statement, a declaration. She read it aloud without realizing. "Alexander Ashbourne, witness to the conspiracy and sworn protector of this record." The men around them went quiet again. The leader's expression hardened. "That changes nothing." Clara's heart raced. "Yes, it does." He turned sharply toward her. "No, girl, it doesn't." His voice dropped. "The book proves the conspiracy exists." He pointed at the pages. "And if this book becomes public, dozens of powerful men fall." The Earl nodded once. "That was always the purpose." The man smiled again. "But we are not interested in justice." The pistols lifted slightly. "We are interested in survival." Clara felt her stomach twist. "You want to destroy the book?" "Yes." "And kill us?" "Yes." The Earl spoke calmly. "You could have done that 10 years ago." "We tried." Clara blinked. "You tried?" The leader looked at her with mild amusement. "The nobleman your father gave the book to, the one who disappeared." Clara remembered the story. "Yes." "That was our first attempt." Her throat tightened. "You killed him?" "Yes." "But he had already hidden the book." The man's eyes returned to the Earl. "Which is why we spent the last decade searching for the girl." Clara looked down at the book again. "And now you've found it?" "Yes." The Earl stepped slightly closer to Clara. The movement was subtle, protective. The leader noticed. "Touching," he said, "but unnecessary." He lifted his pistol fully. "Hand over the book." Clara's fingers tightened around the cover. "No." The man sighed. "You really should reconsider." "No." The Earl's voice came quietly beside her. Clara. She did not look at him. If we give it to them, the truth disappears forever. Yes. And my father died protecting it. Yes. Clara's voice steadied. Then I'm not giving it back. The leader's patience snapped. Enough. His pistol aimed directly at the Earl. Drop the book. The Earl's hand moved slightly toward his coat. Clara saw it. The pistol he had hidden there. The leader saw it too. Don't. The Earl stopped. The ruins had become completely still. Clara looked down at the pages again. Then she did something no one expected. She tore the first page out. The leader shouted, "What are you doing?" Clara ripped another page free, then another. Paper scattered into the cold night air. The men surged forward. "Stop her!" But Clara kept tearing, page after page, names, evidence, secrets, all of it ripped from the binding. The Earl stared at her. "What are you doing?" Clara's voice shook but did not break. "Sharing the truth." She threw the pages into the wind. The strong night breeze caught them instantly. Sheets of paper flew across the ruined cathedral courtyard, over the broken walls, into the darkness beyond. The leader shouted in fury, "Catch them!" The men scattered, chasing the flying pages through the ruins. The Earl looked at Clara in disbelief. "You've just scattered the evidence?" Clara met his gaze. "Yes. But now they can't destroy it." The wind carried the pages across the hills. Some would be lost, but many would be found, by farmers, travellers, villagers, and eventually, the newspapers. The leader returned moments later, furious. "You foolish girl!" Clara closed the empty book and dropped it at his feet. "Now the truth belongs to everyone." For the first time, the Earl of Ashbourne smiled. Not a cold smile, a proud one. The leader's face twisted with rage. "You've ruined everything." "No," the Earl said quietly. "She saved it." In the distance, faint sounds began to echo through the hills. Horse hooves, the estate guards. The leader heard them too. His expression changed instantly. "This isn't over." He turned and disappeared into the darkness with the remaining men. Within minutes, the cathedral ruins were empty again. Only the wind and scattered lantern light remained. Clara stood in the quiet courtyard beside the Earl. Her hands still trembled. Was that the right choice? The Earl looked out across the hills where the pages had vanished into the night. Yes. Why? Because no single person controls the truth now. Clara exhaled slowly. "My father would have liked that." "Yes," the Earl said softly. "I believe he would." The wind moved gently through the broken arches above them. Clara looked down at the empty book. "It's strange." "What is?" "I thought you bought me at that auction." The Earl turned toward her. "I did." She smiled faintly. "But now it feels like you were rescuing something." The Earl raised an eyebrow. "What?" Clara looked out across the dark countryside. "The truth?" The Earl followed her gaze, and somewhere far beyond the hills, scattered pages of a dangerous book were already beginning to find new readers. Men who had believed their secrets were buried forever would soon discover otherwise. Because by morning, England would start asking questions, and the answers would shake the country. Clara glanced at the Earl. "You know something." "What?" "When England hears this story, yes. They'll say the Earl bought a servant girl at auction." The Earl nodded slightly. "That is what they will say." Clara smiled. "But the truth will be much stranger than that." And under the cold midnight sky, The girl who had once been sold for £30 stood beside the man who had spent 10 years protecting a truth powerful enough to change a nation. And that was the moment everything finally began to change. Before you go, tell me something. Where in the world are you listening to this story from tonight? I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy long, dramatic stories filled with secrets, twists, and moments that keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure you subscribe to Jane Tells Stories. Because the next story may begin with something simple and end with a truth no one expected.